Hi, welcome to my channel, thanks for tuning in. This is my review of the fifth and penultimate episode of the Loki TV series titled Journey into Mystery. There'll be spoilers from the get-go, so let's get started. The episode starts with a really beautiful shot, starting looking down at the control room, then looping round towards the golden elevator doors, then through to the remains of the timekeepers, then to the ruined cityscape, and finally zooming into Loki where he woke up last week. This episode had some particularly beautiful cinematography. One thing I did notice in that sequence is that above the elevator is that phrase from last episode, "For all time, always." Side note, before we get into it, due to the sheer volume of Lokis in this episode, things might get a little confusing. When I say Loki, I'm referring to our main Loki. The others I will generally be using the same descriptor as the captions, and hopefully we won't get too lost. Loki asks his new companions the who, what and where. When and why will follow later. Comic Loki concisely responds that they are in the void, the big cloud monster is Goliath who wants to eat them, and they need to go. Back at the TVA, Sylvie is interrogating Ravonna, who claims not to know who is behind the TVA. Sylvie taunts her with it now being her reality that has been destroyed, and after what we saw last week, I can't blame her for wanting to rub it in a bit. Somehow they are back in the courtroom. It's not clear how, as it looked like they'd picked up straight where they left off in the Timekeeper's throne room. And I'm not sure why Sylvie would have moved her before taking her tempad and asking her questions, or how she would have got through the TVA with a prisoner. Sylvie says she's going to kill her, and Ravonna tries to buy time by saying that Loki isn't really dead, and claiming she wants to know who lied to her as well. She explains that they can't actually destroy the matter from a brand timeline, so they move it to a void at the end of time where it can't keep growing. So much for my thought that it might have been deliberate. Ravonna says she can help if Sylvie trusts her. Unfortunately for her, she really isn't all that good a liar when it isn't her friend she's lying to. I didn't believe her for a minute, mainly because she pruned Loki after she saw that the timekeepers were frauds, and then was willing to die for the cause. If she really was feeling betrayed like she's claiming here, she would have reacted differently last week. Sylvie seems to go along, but I don't think she believes it either. I think she just wanted to see how much she could get from Ravonna. In the void, our team of Lokis are trekking through the wilderness, past what looks like the remains of a spaceship. I wonder what the collective noun is for a group of Lokis. Personally, I think a mischief is rather fitting. Loki tries to get them to stop so he can ask a few thousand questions. Comic Loki says they can't, as they have to keep moving so they don't die, and when questioned on the plan, just says it's "don't die," which Loki says is not a plan, just a general demand of living. There were a number of really fantastic lines this week. Loki finally loses it and screams for someone to please explain to him what is going on, saying it's been a very tiring last few days, or months. He's not even sure how long it's been since New York. Which, fair point, he has definitely been having a week. He didn't even find the alligator all that strange. Kid Loki orders him to be quiet, or he will signal Goliath. But he does explain that this is where the TVA send everything that they prune, and Goliath is what ensures that nothing ever returns. It apparently consumes matter and energy and devours whole realities in an instant. Loki finds out the alligator is a Loki as well, and he's willing to accept it, by which it clearly means to not think about it so he can move on. He asks why there are so many of them, and Comic Loki answers that it's because they survive, that is what they do, but that they can't escape. He says they all did the same thing when they arrived that Loki is doing now, making bad plans that go nowhere. Loki decides to stick with them, and Kid Loki reveals that his Nexus event was killing Thor, which stops Loki in his tracks for a moment. At the TVA, Ravonna appears to be cooperating and is asking Miss Minutes to pull up the files about the founding of the TVA. But Sylvie has an idea about the end of time, and they determine that that must be where the ones behind the TVA are hiding. Ravonna says there is no way to get there, but when Sylvie is going to kill her, Miss Minutes chimes in and suggests the Void ship. Ravonna claims it's a prototype that might get them through the void, in her least convincing lie yet. Miss Minutes is having some trouble bringing up the files for this non-existent ship, and Sylvie is definitely onto them. What was interesting is that Miss Minutes was intelligent and sentient enough to improvise a stalling tactic. I mean, I suppose that maybe she's just programmed with specific protocols for a hostage situation, but it did seem like the former. Stalling done, Minutemen storm the room and Sylvie ducks for cover. There is a bit of back and forth in which Ravonna is nervous, presumably concerned about Sylvie saying too much, and then Sylvie prunes herself. Loki and the Variants, which sounds like a bad band name, have made it to their bunker and appear to be trading life stories. Comic Loki tells his story that he used his magic to fake his death against Thanos, but then realised that everywhere he went only pain followed, so he removed himself, retired to a remote planet. His nexus point was when he got lonely and missed Thor, and as soon as he tried to leave, the TVA caught him. Loki says he's leaving. He's going to escape and get back to the TVA. He tells them a bit about Sylvie and says that she needs him. If Alioth lives, it dies. His rousing speech is met with laughter from the others, and he leaves only to find another mischief of Loki's waiting outside. Sylvie wakes up in the void and immediately has to run from Alioth. There is a moment where it touches her and she sees a vision of some sort. As she is running, a car comes towards her, beeping its horn, and she jumps in as it pulls round for her. I knew it had to be Mobius, and somehow that stupid car just really fits for him. Sylvie backseat drives as they try to escape, and we jump back to our multiplying Lokis. Comic Loki blames Loki for leading the others there, but it turns out it was boastful Loki who double-crossed them, only to be double-crossed by President Loki, who was then double-crossed by the other Lokis. A fight breaks out, and Loki, Kid Loki, Alligator Loki, and Comic Loki manage to escape during the chaos. Comic Loki creates an illusion of them to cover their escape, which is a bit of foreshadowing for his later actions. Comic Loki is disillusioned with a lot of them. They lie and they cheat, and they cut the throat of every person who trusts them, all for power. That they are broken. And Kid Loki chimes in that any time any of them dare to try and fix themselves, they are just sent here to die. And how tragic is that? Loki can't change, because the Timekeepers have decided what he is, and any time he does grow, they just kill him. But Loki does use that to convince them to help him, at least as far as getting him to Alioth. Mobius is also rather disillusioned. He thought they were the good guys, and when Sylvie points out their not-so-good acts, he says that when you think the ends justify the means, there is not much you won't do. That he was doing what he had to, the same way she was. Though he does apologise for hunting her. Sylvie thinks that Alioth must have already got Loki. Mobius is not so sure, but Sylvie says that the only thing matters now is getting out and finding out whoever is behind all of this. Looks like she's thinking along the same lines as Loki and wants to go back to the Dark Angry Cloud. Mobius rather reluctantly goes along. Loki gets a demonstration of quite how powerful Alioth is and realises he needs a better plan. They see a car approaching, and the others say that it probably means cannibals, of either the marauder or pirate flavour. However, it is Sylvie and Mobius. He runs to Sylvie in what looks like a move that should end in a dramatic hug but doesn't, and he seems equally happy to see Mobius. Sylvie says they thought he could do with some backup, and Loki introduces them with probably the best line of the episode, if not the series. Us as a child, us in the future, us as an alligator. It's best not to question it. And then Mobius gets another great line. You throw a rock out here and you hit a Loki. I swear there is an entire video on just the best dialogue from this episode. Though it does raise the question of why we haven't seen anyone else. Yes, Lokis are very good at surviving, but are they really the only variants to survive the void? Mobius appears to be the only non-Loki around. It seems unlikely that no one else would have made it. Sylvie is not impressed with the plan to paper-cut Alioth to death and says that her plan is to enchant him instead. Loki thinks that is insane, but Mobius backs her play. At the TVA, we finally find out what happened to B-15 when Ravonna comes to question her. Thankfully she survived, even though she's now being held prisoner. And frankly, while she's the one locked up, she seems to be the one in control in their conversation. B-15 questions how she could be accused of being disloyal when the Timekeepers weren't real. She thinks that people should know the truth, but Ravonna thinks the TVA needs stability, and that is what it's going to get until she figures out what is going on. B-15 thinks that Ravonna doesn't actually care about protecting the TVA, but she just wants to find out who's behind all of this. She says that she will never beat Sylvie to it, as she just wants it, and Sylvie needs it. She may have only got the one scene, but B-15 was just awesome throughout. I am really hoping she has a bigger role to play next week. Ravonna then gets Miss Minutes to pull up the records of the founding of the TVA, for real this time. She justifies it by saying that whoever created this place is in danger, and she needs to find them. It's only on screen for a split second, but there is a decidedly smug look on her face as she walks away. Ravonna seems all over the place. Sometimes it feels like she's actually feeling betrayed and wants to find the truth, but then others it seems like she already knew a lot of this. I mean, if she knows they are variants, then she knows the Timekeepers are lying. Honestly, I'm starting to think she's taking advantage of the situation to make a power play, that she wants to take over the TVA herself. Or, crazy theory time, her whole career at the TVA has been a long con and she wants to take them out as well. I said it in my 5 things video, she's confusing in a way that is just annoying, not interesting. The Lokis plus Mobius have found shelter while they wait to execute their plan. We get another parallel between Loki and Mobius. when he is asked about turning on the very thing he's devoted his life to, and he answers that it is never too late to change. Loki and Sylvie are sat outside to talk. There is definitely a romantic undertone to their interaction, but not so much that it couldn't also be seen as friendship, or even a sibling-type relationship. Not sure if this is slow burn, or Disney not quite wanting to commit to going there. Loki says he's cold and conjures a blanket, which is either the writers forgetting he is a frost giant, or him making a play, as they do eventually end up sharing it, even if they aren't exactly snuggled up together. Given the significant look he gives Sylvie as he does it, I suspect it's the latter. They both dismiss Mobius's theory about how they created the Nexus Point as total rubbish. Methinks they do protest too much. Sylvie says that she doesn't know how to do this, that she doesn't have friends. They have another nice moment, and it seems like they are genuinely just enjoying the simple touch of leaning into each other as they sit side by side. I have absolutely nothing against the ship, but honestly what I think these two need more than anything is this friendship. She asks him how she can know that he won't betray her at the end, and he says that he's betrayed everyone who ever loved him, which is maybe not the best opening, but he knows what he did and why, and that's not who he is anymore. They talk about what they will do if they win. Sylvie doesn't know, and Loki suggests that they could figure it out together. And then Alioth comes to interrupt the moment, and our party say their farewells. Sylvie gives Loki the temp pad, but he says he's staying. Sylvie is not surprised, even if she tries to talk him out of it, and he says that she goes, he goes. He gives it to Mobius. Mobius invites the other two Lokis to come with him, but they say this is their home. Kid Loki gives Loki his sword, and Comic Loki wishes them luck before they depart. Loki asks Mobius what he's going to do at the TVA, and he says, burn it to the ground. Thanks for the spark. He offers a hand, but Loki hugs him instead. It is a beautiful moment, even if Mobius does whisper to Sylvie that she is his favourite. And then there were two, though we do see a somewhat loaded look back from Comic Loki. They need a branch to drop from Alioth, and it isn't looking like they have the time to wait. They need a distraction. In a beautiful bit of unspoken communication, Loki says he will do it, despite Sylvie's objections. It seems to be working, but Sylvie is struggling and is nearly consumed before Comic Loki comes to the rescue, creating an extensive illusion for the beast to consume. Sylvie says that she and Loki are going to enchant it together, that they are the same, so he does know how. It takes him a moment to get it, and Comic Loki is running out of juice and is consumed. Or at least it appears he is. Illusions are his thing. Loki and Sylvie don't appear to be succeeding, but at the very last moment they do it. A path opens up and the clouds clear, revealing what looks like a castle in the distance. Wow, that was an episode and a half. It might even be better than the first one. So many great moments, fantastic dialogue, amazing cinematography, some good emotional beats, and some solid introspection. We're all set up for the finale, with Mobius on his way to take down the TVA and Loki and Sylvie to take down whoever created it. Honestly, the only part of the episode I didn't like was Ravonna. It didn't make sense that she was such a bad liar. We've seen her lie to Mobius and she's good at it. Not to mention her entire job revolves around lying to everyone around her. It was as if she wasn't even trying. I suppose you could argue that she was shaken over what happened to the Timekeepers, but that just doesn't feel right. She seems to want to find out who is behind the TVA, but her belief in them doesn't seem shaken. She still takes Loki out and isn't willing to work with Sylvie. She's coming across as curious with a dash of determination, rather than betrayed like B-15 and Mobius. I'm not sure that she doesn't genuinely want to find the real Timekeepers just to protect them. I guess we'll find out next week, but I'm only interested because I'm not enjoying the mystery, not because I'm actually interested and care about it. I do hold out a tiny bit of hope we'll see Comic Loki again. They did establish that he'd created an illusion powerful enough to trick Thanos. They could easily bring him back, and I don't like the thought of Kid Loki being on his own. It looked like they had banded together because they were the only ones that had learned better and didn't want to keep going on the way they had. Mobius and Sylvie was the dynamic that I didn't know I needed until they gave it to me. I'm sad that we're unlikely to see any more of it. Still not completely sold that they are actually going to follow through on the whole Loki-Sylvie thing. Sure, there was a lot of subtext and romantic moments, but nothing that couldn't be passed off as friendship. It honestly felt a bit like queerbaiting, clearly there, but never so unambiguous that it can't be explained away if you don't want to see it. Poor Loki, forced to deal with multiple variations of himself and all the backstabbing that comes with that. His exasperation was both comic and karmic. I really like how they're hammering the point home to him and showing his growth so we can know that this is going to stick, but doing it in a way that feels natural and generally furthers the plot or provides genuine insight into the character. Loki does get his big heroic moment, though I'd argue at this point it is still more about Sylvie than it is about being the right thing to do. But loyalty to your friends, loving someone enough to make that sacrifice for them, that is definitely part of the journey. I wonder if before the end of this we will see Loki take that step of being willing to make that sacrifice just because it's the right thing to do. And I think that might be what whoever is behind all of this is so afraid of. They know that Loki is the one who can take them down, which is why the TVA caught so many Loki variants, because they couldn't ever let him learn and grow. They had to shut off any possibility of him becoming the person who would risk himself to destroy them. More than anyone else, he had to keep to the path they had set. And there were so many branches because they were trying to force him onto a path that wasn't true. They've got a lot to pack in next week, both the action back at the TVA and Beyond the Void. I'm a little concerned about them bringing everything to a satisfying conclusion with only one episode left, but everything so far has been excellent, so it should be fine. I don't think, however, we are going to see what the consequences of taking down the TVA are. That might be saved for a future film or show. What did you think, and what are you most looking forward to seeing next week? Let me know in the comments down below. If you liked the video, please hit that like button, and if you want to see more, please subscribe and consider hitting that notification bell so you'll know when I post my next review. Until then, have a good one.